What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? What's going on, gang? Little Tuesday afternoon show, 5 o'clock in the east, a little earlier out in the west, middle of the country, a little bit less earlier. Cujo's here. What's going on, Cujo? A couple other folks hanging out, haven't chimed in just yet. Joker's back here already making noise. Show's off and running. Apologies for not getting on the air yesterday. A little recovery day after hanging out at the Bad Religion show on Sunday night. Great time out at the show. Fun night with the friends. Not a great DFS day on Sunday for me, unfortunately. Didn't do all that well in football. Didn't play basketball that night. But we did have a monster come through in the Discord. Friend of the show, supporter of the site, could be Travis. I assume his real name is Travis, but we're going by could be. Because it could be Travis, it could be anybody else. But whoever it is, went out there and took down the afternoon slate on Sunday over on DK for $100,000. Not too bad, buddy. I don't know if Travis is here hanging out with us tonight, but that was nice to see in the Discord. I know Travis is a guy who followed over from, I believe, over at Stochastic. I'm sure he gets stuff over there. Probably gets stuff all around the industry. But it was really nice to see somebody that we know and love and take down a win like that. That was pretty day making for me on Sunday when I saw that, or late Sunday night anyway. That was just great to see. Made me feel a lot better about my DFS Sunday anyway. So congrats to Travis. We've got 100K up top on these basketball slates to deal with today. Only 3 games to talk about. Should be a fun one to go through. It's not the greatest slate in the world. Couple of ugly games, couple of weird rotations with that Clippers trade. I was up for that. I saw that Woj bomb as it hit last night. I dropped it in the Discord. But, yeah, wild trade. I think the Clippers got the better side of it. But it all depends on what the Sixers are able to do with those draft picks. Word is they want to take those 2 first-rounders and flip them and just find a new guard to put with Embiid and Maxey. Which is like straight haul-wise. It's not a bad pickup for the Clips getting Harden. And for that package, especially without dealing like a couple of their key bench pieces, like those are a couple of serviceable veteran guys who are easily replaceable, somewhat past their prime. They didn't really have to go too deep, like Man's still there, like, guys like that. So I thought it was an interesting trade. I thought it's the right spot for Harden. I read somebody's tweet, assuming the clear starting 5 start. Apparently they're all from Los Angeles. So it'll be the first time that all of the starting 5 is playing in their hometown since 1970, for whatever it was. Which I thought was cool. But I thought it was also interesting just, Harden getting his preferred destination in the end. Yet again. But that was by all accounts where he wanted to go play. Go play with PG and Kawhi and his old pal Russ. We've seen the Russ and James thing before, but it'll be interesting to see how it works at this point. A couple other folks trickling in. We've got Gilbert Powell here. What's up, Gilbert? Cujo's here. Dell's here. Fanatic's here. Jake Swales. Mamba's here. Mamba says, I'm getting sick and tired of this Sixers organization just diminishing value of return on every single trade of all time. Yeah, that one was definitely not a win for the 76ers. Not exactly the way you would want it to go down in the end, on the front side of that Harden acquisition. The Sixers got a pair of first-round picks and I believe a pair of second-round picks and then another pick swap. And the word is that the 2 first-rounders, like I said, they're going to try and flip this year to turn into something else. And I would assume a couple of those, those contracts and whatnot. Montez Sweat pulled more draft capital than Chase Young. Yeah, it's been an interesting NFL trade deadline. For sure. Anything else pop in the last little bit? I didn't look immediately before. I've been following it through the day. But yeah, the Commanders kind of clearing house on that D-line was interesting. The Vikes picked up Joshua Dobbs instead of Jameis Winston. Debatable which one that is, but that's probably good news for the folks holding on to Kyler Murray. Apparently he's going to get the start, or the down depth chart kid is going to get the start. So 2 first, 2 second, and a swap plus all those trash players. Darn Philly at it again. Yeah, look, it all comes down to what Morey and the staff over there turn that into. So it's tough to evaluate the Philly side of it right now. They didn't get screwed. They didn't get scammed or anything like that on the trade. They got back a reasonable enough package that they can turn that into a player. It's just a matter of who they're able to get, how it fits, and all of that. So Philly side, excuse me. Philly side, I think, to be determined. Clippers side, that's a win for the Clips. James Harden side, that's a win for James Harden. So it'll be interesting to watch. If they're all healthy going into the playoffs, it'd be interesting. Not a lot of D, or at least on the James Harden side of it. Kawhi's gonna have his work cut out for him. Just kidding. Philly would probably be better in the. I mean, right now they're definitely not. Right. Right now, no Harden. Diminished by that. You get once you integrate Batum and Covington and those guys, then sure, whatever. They've got some rotation guys. But yeah, right now I think Philly's definitely downgraded from where, like, on paper 6 months ago you would have said this team would be. But that was already the case with Harden kind of sitting out anyway. So it should turn into a moderate win for Philly, I think, in the end. Like, just over an absence, it's probably going to be better than just having nobody filling that jersey. Barkley, Wilt, Moses Simmons, Jimmy Butler, Drew Holiday. Washington destroying my team. Demon Nat. Demon Nat sounds like a Commanders fan. Yeah, not a great day to be a Commanders fan, which sucks because they've been frisky. They've been fun this year. Howell and that offense are a little bit interesting to watch. We've seen them play the Eagles really well twice. But they got some pieces on the O side. Had some pieces on the D side, so they'll have to rebuild that a little bit. But it's probably the right move. You don't want to. The last thing you want to do in most of these sports is kind of float through the middle and never really stack up and make a run. This might be the 5th time we've traded for Covington. Yeah, Rocco's got a spot in Philly, I'm sure. He'll be fine. He'll help all the other new guys find good places to eat. Let's dig into this thing. Board looked a little bit different. As threatened, I was able to find a couple minutes and run some sims on over on Ace Mind. So I added to the board and I moved DraftKings over. We had the big thing of statistics in the middle here. I trimmed this down to just season-long stats, minutes per game, games, minutes per game. Last says minutes played the last game, fantasy points the last game. FanDuel points per minute is here. I should probably move that over here. This is their usage rate for the season. And then we get into the DK stuff. And then all the other, the points, the true shooting, etc. I moved over to there so that we can kind of hopefully see most of this on one screen. I think we've got everything important on one screen. And I even increased the size so it's a little bit more legible. So what we won't have is me, or what we'll need to do is me remembering to scroll down the board. But we've got our, the important part is we've got everything in one view. FanDuel over here, DraftKings over here, and on both sides we've got these 3 columns. So this is per just one Ace Mind sim for each. I didn't build lineups and then sim them against the pool. I just let it generate a pool of lineups. But the way that it works is it creates a full lineup. So let's say there's 35,000 spots, which just reminds me I got to put my placeholders in. Let's say there's 35,000 entries on the FanDuel slate. It will go in and it will create 35,000 lineups based on the projections, based on whatever parameters you set for it. And that would represent the pool. If I was building lineups, I'd have 2,000 lineups or whatever out of RG's optimizer, or Ace Mind has an optimizer as well. And you can drop those in. So it's like, all right, these are my lineups. How would they do versus a public pool? Or you can just use the public pool, right? So it dedupes itself. So you get, if it was 35,000, or the FanDuel contest tonight is 52,000. So it's 52,900 entries. Let's say it would, winnow it down to like 35,000 from that. So you get a pool of 35,000 lineups that we're looking at or thereabout, and we're pulling out for each player, how frequently is he in the top 1%? Or how frequently does, each player land in lineups that are in the top 1%? How frequently are they in lineups that win? And that's, again, over here in green for DK. And then what's the player ROI across that sim? It's an imperfect setup. I'll get more data. I'll run more sims as we have, it's, what are we on? The fourth games of the season for most of these teams. It's like the third NBA show we've done. Still a work in progress, but we'll get this where we want it to be. We'll have a little bit more of a backbone there, but I thought for this show, we'd have enough, especially for a 3-gamer. Not a lot of it's going to change the more sims you run. And there's going to be a lot of concentrated ownership. I'm just putting these placeholders in, and then we'll get started. Mom is going to stay positive. Yeah, look, I mean, you've still got a lot to like on that Philly team. It's not like they traded themselves out of contention. Now, if Joel Embiid doesn't like what they did, or if they can't come up with a good asset for those 2 picks to put with him and Maxey, then it becomes a little bit more problematic. If you start getting Embiid, banging the drum about being traded out of town, and teams like the Knicks have been rumored and tied to him, and there's all kind. Every team in the league will want Joel Embiid. Don't get me wrong, but there are clear suitors that wouldn't really involve a big change of life for him. That would be pretty easy to get to, and a lot of other competing spots. So it all comes down to what they can do with those 2 picks. And what does Joel think of it, really? And that's your killer. But I would trade most of my Knicks pool of talent for Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey just right now as a pure, like, you get them now for this year, and then all contracts are washed out. I would probably rather have those 2 guys as a starting point and then fill in around them than have my core of good, not great Knicks that will guarantee me probably another second-round playoff exit this year. Oh, Daniel Pope, that's right. Happy Halloween, everybody. One of the better holidays of the year. Happy Halloween, Daniel Pope. What's going on, buddy? Playing 20 max on FanDuel tonight. Any tips or rules for this 3-game slate? You're going to have to embrace some variance, some down lineup guys to get different. You want to follow, of course, with NBA, as we talk about all the time, we really want to be following the optimal construction paths, going with most of these excellent points per dollar, the high probability guys, and building out a lineup that's highly optimal, frequently winning, positive ROI if possible, high ROI. And then you just want to get it where you're making 2 key pivots and not necessarily saying, like, I'm going to dip down to Sam Merrill in place of Markelle Fultz. You probably want to make more of a pivot like, hey, Jalen Brunson's coming up in 15 of my lineups. Let me pivot some of those out. I'll have some Brunson, but then maybe I'll drop down to a Fultz or drop down to a even further like a Goodwin or a Jones or somebody like that. So you want to embrace Bones Highland at 4,800. Drew Eubanks down here. Not that you're pivoting those guys to him, but little value plays like those, especially the ones that are lower owned, with a realistic shot of 20 plus minutes at a fair price, like a good point per dollar mark. So Eubanks is a decent example of that. On FanDuel, he's got eligibility at the power forward spot. I don't know that I would want him at center with my one bite at the apple. Not that center's like overly populated on FanDuel today. But that's just a good example where, the natural is going to be dropping into a lot of these for the public. And as we've all seen, the ownership will diminish as you go down. But with a guy like Eubanks, for one, he's not terrible in terms of points per dollar. 1.01 FanDuel points per minute. 1.01 FanDuel points per minute in 18 and a half minutes so far this year. Giving him 20, I think that's a reasonable expectation. And if he gets that 20 minutes, gives me 20 points at 4,100, that's a decent point per dollar. You obviously need a little ceiling beyond that, but you don't need a ton of ceiling on a 3-game slate. It's really, in a certain sense, you're just kind of, all right, I'm going to booked that square for 4,100. I'm just going to take 4,100 of salary and put it in that spot. And what I get. And now I've got more money per spot for those other spots. And that's where, some of the min price guys obviously would factor in. If we get somebody down here in this area who ends up dropping into a starting lineup, then you get, or picking up a huge minutes upgrade, then you get a crazy value play that becomes very, very popular, which would become a key, critical component that you'd probably want in all 20 of those lineups. And then your pivots become more in this mid-range here. So really with a 3-game slate, I think you can chase some of that ownership. Just look at it in terms of next to either a probability metric or even just a raw minutes, raw fantasy points per dollar kind of a thing over here, and make your decision that way. So look for the lower owned guys from within those realistic plays. Again, you don't really want to be getting down to the Malachi Branhams, the Joe Ingalls of the world too much. Those aren't your great differentiators, especially not in a 20. In a 20, there's going to be so much concentration of higher up guys. In a 150 max in the full tournaments, you do need to go a little bit further, but even in those, you're just not getting to much of these guys. I mean, your negative ROI on all these guys, extremely thin on the win percentages, right? We get Bassie, who's projected for 12 minutes and probably a little over projected even for that. 3.55% in the winning lineup, in the top 1%, 4% in the winning lineup. I get at these columns straight. Versus all these other guys, sub 1%. Everybody down this way, negative ROI. You do get a lot of negative ROI numbers, though. It's the nature of the beast. But Nurk is looking like a solid positive ROI there. Donovan Mitchell's assuming he goes. Potential monster. I kept tweaking his usage number. I could push this a little higher fairly easily, but I wanted to be conservative for me about it. We've talked about this before. I do Mama says, before I forget, thanks again for running through that CD play on the show. I didn't play any Hopkins, otherwise I'm clear first, second, and third. Still extremely profitable. Nice, Mama. That's awesome, dude. Glad to hear the extremely profitable. Yeah, I didn't have much Hopkins either. I was not, unfortunately, not a believer in Mr. Levis there, and proved everybody wrong. I think I heard before Tannehill had 2 touchdown passes, and he had 4 just in that game, something like that. Tannehill had 2 on the season, which is pathetic. I hadn't realized that. Tizzleman's asking, I was looking at your projections for this slate. Diabate from the Clippers isn't listed. I was interested in him if Zubac was ruled out, since the Clippers roster is pretty thin. Do you not expect him to get any go? I didn't have him projected for minutes. Let me bounce back over, see what he's got across town. Bear with me. Still not picking up any minutes across town. He was somebody that was on the list of people that I looked at, and earlier in the day, I saw some places were giving him a handful of minutes. I'm just jumping up to see if they've updated over at this is RG that I go to check against. They're realistic enough numbers over there most of the time. All right, they dropped 4 minutes on him over there. So typically that's a case of I've filled out the realistic minutes for all of these guys, and I've got 6 extra minutes on my hands. So rather than saying, all right, I'm going to drive Mason Plumlee up by 2, I'm going to give 2 to this guy and 1 to that guy, you just stick them on somebody. There is, realistic potential if they need a big body for sure that he would step up into some minutes if Zubac doesn't go. But in this form, without that news, I'm probably not going to project it. I tend to go the other way, where I will give those minutes to guys and create a tighter rotation. I don't like having an 11-man projected rotation with 2 guys picking up less than 5 minutes. I think that's a little silly. I'd rather just put it in the more realistic way, assuming all those guys get the start. But yeah, if Zubac goes out, I would assume that he's the guy that gets it. Right? You'll see Plumlee obviously step up. But yeah, I would think that he gets it. Maybe Kobe Brown gets a little bit more run. I've got him at handful of minutes. Yeah, so I've got Brown at 14. And then I've got, I think, a 28-20 split. Yeah, there's Plumlee at 20. So yeah, if I was to put him in, it would only be with 4 or 5 minutes on it right now. But keep an eye on the news. It would become a potential source of value. I really hope I didn't. I hope that all that came through, because I forgot that I opened a tab on the thing, and sometimes that kills the audio here. Yeah, it says happy to go through those questions. I'm still catching up too on some of these rotations, especially some of these down the bench guys. So there will be a little bit of me needing to think about it or look people up when those questions come up, until the rotations are solidified, the roles are a little bit more solidified, and much more importantly, I have a better handle on them. It's been a minute. But yeah, I think that was a great question. Appreciate it. And always good to remind me of situations like that too, for all our sakes. A few minutes until the 5:30 injury report. Maybe we'll know more then. Yeah, I was planning on just, since we only had 3 games, we'll zoom through this in a half hour. I'll be off by 5:30. But yeah, we'll keep an eye out for that. See whatever happens. Josh Gillum talking about the demographics of the DFS community. Yeah, I think that's kind of just the breakdown of the community itself, of who's playing. I think it is just kind of heavily leaned that way, Josh. It's what it's always struck me as anyway. And that could just be because of a lot of the, community facing folks like myself tend to look like this. But yeah, it is kind of stark. And it always seems to me, a little clunky and ham-fisted and not necessarily natural when people of color pop onto the shows, and then it's all of a sudden hey, we've got new guy. It seems a little pandery to me. I'd love to see a show pop up where it's just people who started it up on their own and see it succeed. But yeah, it's a little bit weird. Daniel Pubs, that's why people don't know basketball. That could be one take on it as well. Anyway, before we get ourselves into any kind of trouble over here with these kinds of conversations, I think we all know that we're all coming from the right place and just, talking. Matt Pat's here. What's up, Matthew? Steve Mackler says Chief Justice is one of the best out there. Can't say I know him. I'm happy to check out his content. Yeah, and I'm somebody who doesn't pay attention to anything that goes on in the industry. I was not making a blanket statement out there by any means. I'm sure there are great people who cover it. I just meant the efforts that I've seen on behalf of some of the sites in the past have just been wow, you're just really pandering and cramming somebody in there. And that says this convo went in a weird direction. I'm trying to get myself out of it. Ricky Lee says, by the way, Chetty's breaking the slate. Is he now? All right. That's one way to look. Chetty down here, it's a solid 15-point FanDuel projection for $4,000. He is getting 20 minutes, though. I mean, that is the kind of guy that you want to keep your eye on. You get him he picks up an additional, 4 or 5 minutes beyond that at 0.86 fantasy points a minute. You don't have to do too much at those prices. Again, it is to some degree on a 3-game slate. You just want to book a cheap square or two. So he's on that list. He's a little bit more loosely on that list, but he does pop in, 1.9 times into the 1.9% in the winner, in the top one rather, 2.3% in the winner. That seems backward. Did I do those backward? It seems odd that he would be winning 2.3% and top 1%, 1.9. I must have done those backward. This is column 9. Oh, of course, it's just me pasting it. So it's probably which one I pasted where. 50. Yeah, see, now I'm annoyed with myself. Now I got to check this. Hold on. $150, 49. All right, I guess it's just a weird little anomaly with Chetty. Chetty won more times than he got into the top 1% in that one. So he had a couple oddball winners where his $4,000 salary came through. He put up a good score, got into that winning spot. So that's kind of the nature of that play, kind of how you described it. Chetty could break a slate if he has a good game. It just shows the difference between, like, you know, these are good games from Chetty, obviously, where he gets you into the top one. But then when he has that next level good game, it becomes a winner more frequently, which is what you want. So yeah, not uninteresting down board. And again, on a 3-game or 2, you just, as I've said before, once I get down board a little bit, I start looking at some of the mid-price type value guys, the $5,900 Emmanuel Quickly type guys. That's where I do start trying to find, all right, for cheap, I can still get a fantasy point per minute or so. If I go to Drew Eubanks, I'm getting a fantasy point per minute. If I go to IQ, I'm getting a fantasy point per minute. If I go to Jalen Suggs for 47, I'm getting a fantasy point per minute. So I do like looking for those guys, but your options are a lot fewer and far between on just a 3-gamer. You've got a lot of, you know, sub even 9.9 fantasy point per minute type guys down board today. Yeah, the Sims are all backed by it's RG's ownership that I use, as I've said a number of times. So the ROI data is all, you know, based off of the ownership, you know, and how things finish out or something. I don't know how to explain that properly yet. Seeding could be a good play. Yes. I seed the slate to everybody else by just deleting my lineups. Probably the most profitable play you can make tonight outside of winning. Just seeding the slate. But yeah, I think you were going for Chetty there. Yeah. So let's take a look at this thing a little bit. Let's sort by DK. Point per dollar. Norm Powell. Pulling in a bit of a beastly point per dollar at 4.4K for point guard, shooting guard eligibility on the DK slate. 30 minutes in that tight, shortened Clippers rotation. For the season, 0.98 DraftKings points per minute. Is a 1.66 ROI on the DK slate. Is in the winner and the top 1% quite a few times. A little bit less valuable on FanDuel. Negative 0.17 ROI, only in the teens as far as the win in the top 1% percentages. Small forward and shooting guard for $5,500. Different price point. Getting a Kogi, again, a little bit more valuable. A lot of these guys showing a little bit more point per dollar value on the DK board. A lot of cheap prices through here with guys with fairly realistic minutes projections. Let's go in that average price. So these are all, on the average anyway, 4.9K. You've got just a couple of guys that are creeping up a little bit in price, but that's a good little pool of value plays that are all making decent returns. Several positive ROI plays in there. Mitch Robinson. Let's sort by ROI. That's probably one of your more solid ROI marks. Top center ROI on the board. And Dame Jones and Sam Merrill not picking up their DK data. Apologies for that. Not sure it's all that relevant at 6.21 and 4.70 fantasy points. But yeah, nice chunk of ROI, nice chunk of value there from Mitch Robinson at the center spot. Wendell Carter following right behind him though. A couple of pretty decent, inexpensive center options on the DK slate. KD, the potential to be a monster on both sites. Top projected overall player on the board, the only guy over 50. 11,000 on the FanDuel slate. Technically negative, slightly negative ROI, but he's in the winner or the top 1% basically half the time. Just kind of the top pay up option. He's the guy that you're, again, he's your snorkel and your pair of flippers that are an awkward fit in your suitcase that you're packing with these things, but they're the key thing that you need to bring. You have to have him. because nothing else will support your life while you're snorkeling on your vacation. So you need your snorkel, your flippers, and all of that stuff. That's your KD play. To a lesser extent, that's your Donovan Mitchell play today. And really, outside of those two guys, you can put Kawhi and Paul George in that bucket, but not quite. It's really KD up at the top. He's going to be operating again with no Beal, no Booker. Pretty much unlimited ability to do what he wants out there. An okay supporting cast. They've been kind of lighting up bad teams. There's a good chance that he's limited again in terms of the minutes, which is a critical factor here, though. That could definitely shorten our Kevin Durant profitability, because for these prices, if he's not getting to these numbers, that becomes a tragic play pretty quickly. And it's all about those minutes, and it's all about how close this game is in the fourth quarter. Last time out, only played 29.4 minutes. They didn't need him in the fourth quarter. Put up a 45, but that 45 is well short of the 50 plus that we need to even make standard value, let alone a ceiling score. So you got that limitation, but overall 1.28 fantasy points per minute on the FanDuel scale puts him fourth on the board here. Oops. Tops on the board by fantasy points per minute FanDuel scale is Donovan Mitchell. Mitchell comes up as a positive ROI play on the FanDuel slate, slightly negative ROI play on the DK board. 30% of the time in the winner over there, and in the teens on the winners over here, though. Paul George, Kawhi, KD, you see this is, again, going by fantasy points per minute. You get the stars right up at the top, and you get the more obvious plays right up at the top. Any one of those guys could be that big ticket item, but it's most likely to be Kevin Durant. Kawhi pulling in basically right behind him on the DK slate for a pretty significant amount less. The raw projection's a lot less. The point per dollar is lower, but that's a big chunk of salary less. You can probably get both of those guys in your lineup, or any two of these four guys into your lineup. And I think any two of those four guys is a pretty straightforward approach to this slate, and probably the way that a lot of people are going to play it. There would potentially create a little bit of an argument to go a little bit more of a balanced type lineup, because that gets pretty starsy scrubsy if you go that route. But I do think that one's going to come up quite a bit and be pretty optimal, given the significant amount of times these guys are in these winning and top 1% lineups. It becomes pretty clear that these are the four guys that you want. If you could have all four of them, even better, but you can't. The aforementioned questionable Zubac, if he goes, he looks good. One of the higher just raw projections at the center position. I know we're bouncing around a little bit here, but it's just for a 3-gamer, I thought I'd just leave everybody up rather than going straight position by position, and then we'll talk them through and get into it. But I like Zubac here. 4.83 on the FanDuel scale and point per dollar, 5.12 over on DK. Comes up a fair amount of the time in the winning lineups over there. Is that the top? Yeah, it puts him at the second to Mitch. So frequent appearances in the top 1% in the winners, slightly negative ROI. Was I looking at Nurk when I was saying that? I think I was. I was talking about Zubac and looking at Nurk. My apologies. Zubac is down here. So on DK at 5.9K, he's actually thin. Negative 1.19 ROI. Single digit top 1%ers. A lot more valuable on the FanDuel slate at 5,800. The single center site. He's also one of the guys that is showing a little bit of value as a center only. You do have Mitch. You do have Wendell Carter. I like the upside for Mitch against that Cavs team that he played very well against in the playoffs. Like the upside for some boards, like the upside for some blocks, and those stack him up nicely on the FanDuel slate. Yeah, Zubac looks better on FanDuel, more of an also-ran center option on the DK slate, where you get a lot of same type guys through here. A lot of guys, right? Just these three in the 20s, Nurk, Collins, and Mitch. A little bit more diversity of play, I think, on the DK board at the center spot. Getting Mobley at the power forward, Wemby at the power forward is pretty valuable over there. Both those guys in the mid-teens. Fairly strong negative ROI numbers. Could be based on some popularity. A little bit less so on the FanDuel slate. They've got better ROI marks over there. Landing the winners, top 1% a little bit more. Primarily, I would imagine, at the power forward spots. Filling out power forward with those two guys in a lot of lineups. And at 79.81, you can probably get at least one of those guys, if not two of those guys on both sites, into lineups with that collection of stars. Josh says, thanks for the input. Obviously, you can tell which race I am now. I hadn't thought about it that way, buddy, but I guess now I do have a guess. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. We welcome everyone here. We do not think along those terms. Favorite play on FanDuel, Daniel Pope. Here's my top ROI guy on the FanDuel slate. Oh, there's Mitch up there. Blaine, who created or co-created the Ace Mind tools, is saying, "Oh man, Mitch Robinson. I don't think he's happy about seeing Mitch Robinson as the top ROI guy." Look, I've got a hefty projection on him. I'm giving him a full 30 minutes. He played 28.9 the last time out. He's playing basically for 30. He put up 35 FanDuel points on the last slate. I'm projecting him for 30. I think it's a realistic projection, 1.11 points per minute on the FanDuel scale. He does it on the back of only 10% usage. He's not an offensively oriented player outside of some dunks. Extremely high field goal percentage. But he gets it done with some stocks, with some rebounding. But there's upside for Mitch when he gets 20 minutes or 30 minutes rather at these prices. So I'm comfy with it. Tools are working great, by the way, Blaine. Everybody check out acemind.io. Site's pretty killer. Easy to use, easy to figure out. Like, the learning curve is extremely small. A lot of drag and drop makes it really easy. So let's see. What else do we have here? Nurk's in that same situation. Just the minutes. I don't think he gets extended minutes. I've got him projected at 28. Last time out, he only went 22. Didn't play a lot in the fourth quarter. On the season, only 26 a game so far. It's only 3 games. We're dealing with small samples here. But he's a very solid fantasy player when he's out there. 1.22 FanDuel points per minute, 1.20 on the DK scale. In the 20s on DK in terms of top ones, win percentages. 6,700. Good price over there. One of your better options is a pure center on the DK board. On FanDuel, similar. Mid-teens. He's a positive ROI play. I imagine, and I don't imagine, he is just a center. So you stick him at the center spot. You fill out the power forward with some of those other guys that we looked at there. You've got options, though. I mean, there's some positive ROI plays at the center spot based on what we're seeing in these early sets of sims. And that was not the answer to who is my favorite FanDuel play. I got sidetracked myself there. It's certainly not Grayson Allen, Markelle Fultz, Jordan Goodwin. Karis LeVert's always interesting. I know he came up questionable as well. So keep an eye on the news there. Got him in for significant run right now. 0.98 FanDuel points per minute on the season. Last time out, he played almost 45 minutes, put up 50 fantasy points. Has that kind of upside. Obviously, slight bending upside. But he's one, if he doesn't go, that just creates downstream disaster. Max Strus is kind of interesting, just on a guy who's just getting a ton of run right now. Almost 40 minutes a game so far over the first 3, 41.8 last time out, 1.01 FanDuel points per minute. For 61.58, you can get there. I think he's, according to these numbers, he's a pretty key piece of the puzzle, at least on DK half the time, and on FanDuel a little bit more than a third of the time in those top lineups. So you do want to get to him. He's a negative ROI play on the FanDuel slate, and slightly negative ROI play on both sites, but looks like one of those guys that'll be in the wash through those top-end lineups pretty significantly. I'm trying to pick a favorite for you. I mean, KD's an easy favorite to name, but you didn't want that answer. I do like some Nurk. Banchero seems kind of interesting. I don't know what his ownership looks like. Only 0.85 fantasy points per minute so far is definitely not good. 20.5 FanDuel points in 30.5 minutes last time out. That's pretty weak. But it does get him a bit of a discount now. 14% off the time he's in the top lineups on the DK slate. Negative 2.5 ROI, though. A little bit better looking on FanDuel, where he's coming up nearly half the time in the top lineups. Negative 0.5 ROI. Power forward and small forward for 7,100. I kind of like the Banchero just on the raw upside, the raw scoring. Still carrying a decent projection. What was his... Now, I wish when I went in earlier and updated the stats, I just threw them on top of the ones from last year, and now I wish I created a new tab so that I could just easily look up his points per minute from last year. It's the best spot. Wow, we'll have it quick. Come on. October 22. Yeah, whatever, that's fine. Including. Come on. I love the NBA Wowie tool over on AMF, but man, does it load slow. There's another site out there that's got a pretty decent tool like this now. And a lot of... It's really like just raw tables and data sorts. And I forget the name of it. I'll mention it. I'll try and mention it on tomorrow's show. I forget the name of it. I could look in my bookmarks, but I want to find this first. Banchero last year, here it is. 1.06 DraftKings point per minute, 1.03 FanDuel point per minute. So there should be a pretty major positive regression coming from 0.85 that he's put up so far. What was his usage? His usage so far. Is that pulling the right column? Where are we looking at that? Yeah, his usage rate last year was 27.5, and we're down at 20% right now. So that would explain where some of his points have gone. But assuming positive regression at some point, I think that's an interesting spot. I'll unwind calling it my favorite play of the day, considering that the diminished points is based on a significantly diminished usage rate. But I still do like that spot. I guess I don't really have a favorite play of the day. I got plenty of guys I'm happy to tell you are good plays. There's a lot of really similar stuff through the middle, and then there's like very obvious peaks of, nobody really wants me to say that Kevin Durant or Donovan Mitchell, if he plays, or Paul George or Kawhi Leonard are the best plays of the day. They're the obvious stars. They're those pay-up options that we looked at the top of the board before. But you do have a lot to work with. For a 3-gamer, there's a lot of guys who could succeed here. Especially with some of those just mid-type guys picking up some upside in that Clippers rotation. Just a short day. What do we have? 9 guys, 9-man rotation. Hefty minutes for Kawhi, for Paul George, for Russ Westbrook. Russ, negative ROI play. This seems like just Russ Westbrook, right? Comes up a fair amount of the time, nearly 20% of the time in the winning lineups, in the top lineups, but a negative ROI play across both sides. Seems like Russ. 7,100 at point guard on the DK board, 76 on the FanDuel slate. I'll have a fair share of Russ. Be his last day to be out there pounding his chest without Harden taking the ball away from him. They were saying Harden was going to try and get out there and be in attendance tonight. Not in uniform, but in attendance to join his new team. It seems pretty psyched to be out there. I could see Bones getting interesting. If Bones goes out there and gets on a little bit of a heater, picks up a few minutes for 4,800, that's not awful. 4,300 even better on the DK slate. 4,300 he's already showing a decent return in terms of frequently getting into those top lineups. The ROI, negative 3.2, but a decent amount of those top lineups for that price. Basically a 28-20 split between Plumlee and Zubac like we were talking about before. If Zubac doesn't go, you gain another value play here, and then you've got the guy we talked about before, the Vite. The hell's his name? Diabite. See? Who else? Yeah, these guys are who they are. You get to them. Norm is the interesting one here. Given a 30-minute projection at 0.97 fantasy points per minute, 0.98 on DK, he's showing a ton of value. It's just we're plucking a 30-minute projection kind of out of the ether based on who's left on this team right now. Averaging 22 a game, 19 played last time out, did put up 27 fantasy points in that 19 minutes. If he just gives us this, it's right around where he's projected for in the median. That's perfectly fine. We would want a little bit more, but I'll take that. I'll take that scoring for, 55. That's a little bit light. 44 on DK. I'll take that. I hate when I sort things out of the... Excel can be so finicky about stuff like that. Dropping stuff out of these filters and making it a mystery to how to get back to it. Let's just keep looking at teams. What the hell? Cleveland side, a lot of chatter from Mobley about wanting to come in here and prove something to the Knicks after last year's playoffs. Bring it. I think he could come out if you'd like to chase narratives. I think that could be an interesting narrative chase. That's not my thing. But with the idea of motivation, with the idea of plenty of minutes, there's always a little something in basketball. It's a sport in which guy gets the ball in his hands and he's got some specific decisions that he can make, more so than a lot of others. And those specific decisions can lead directly to, or in some cases away from, fantasy points in a lot of other, in a way that's different from a lot of other sports. So loosely and in an entirely non-quantifiable way, as like I've got this amount of money, I've got $9,000 to spend. Do I want Evan Mobley or do I want a different forward? Maybe you start taking some of those things into account. He put up a 61 in his last time out, 33 minutes, 61 FanDuel points. That's all I really care about. 1.26 fantasy points per minute for 8,100. Just sign me up for that anyway, regardless of what he thinks of playing the Knicks. In the winners, 37% of the time, or 33% of the time, top 1%, 31%, 37% rather. Mid-teens on the DK board, a little less value over there. -5 on the ROI scale, a little bit less valuable at 8,100. Same price against the lower cap. Makes him a lot less valuable on DK. But on the FanDuel slate, I like the Mobley play. Mitchell's a star. Excellent option on both sites. I mean, there are, not to... I shouldn't have brought up the narrative thing with Mobley. Because it's obviously there for Mitchell too, right? He's a New York guy, et cetera, et cetera. Don't chase those kind of things for those reasons. That was just whoops. I think I just changed something. That's like as a tiebreaker kind of a thing. But Mitchell's also a guy who, with a little on the day where he comes out pissed off or just wanting to win a basketball game, you're not going to stop him from at least doing everything he can to try and win that game. Whether the shots fall or not becomes the issue, but obviously a monster player when he wants to be, and that's most of the time. 1.63 FanDuel points per minute so far in the season. He missed the last game. He's got two played so far, but significant upside when Garland's not out there. The usage goes through the roof. Everybody else, Max Strus we talked about briefly earlier, but obviously showing a ton of value as a mid-board guy. I think he'll get a little bit popular just given that he's out there playing 40 minutes a night, every given night, putting up roughly a fantasy point per minute. Just on raw scoring, he's got kind of an oddly secure floor for being Max Strus. Jake Swales, Franz Wagner, the play of the day. Trey's got breaded chicken and potatoes for today and tomorrow. Threw some bacon and cheese on a sandwich with the chicken. And then indica. Love it. I had a potato and egg sandwich this morning with crispy bacon added to it. Solid combo. If you're ever in Jersey City, right down the street from my apartment at the Franklin, pretty solid little spot. I think people are vastly underestimating how great this Clippers team is now. Everyone forgetting that Ty Lue is a great coach, not good, great. I think that will be a very good, interesting team if they can stay healthy. Somebody sent out a tweet that made me chuckle, and it was one of those Clippers are out here saying, who's going to stop us? And then it was an MRI machine raising his hand, which I thought was kind of clever. But yeah, that could be a potentially awesome team. They'll at least have some fun games. It'll be interesting to see how they break down for DFS. Like for our purposes, it might be one of those situations where it's like, shit, now all of these guys are just kind of cannibalizing one another and I can't use any of them. It'll become a factor of where the usage goes and where the pricing goes, even more importantly. So yeah, obviously, LeVert at the top of the board, very interesting play, assuming that he goes. Max Strus, interesting. I got to think he's going to be popular. Mobley, definitely interesting to me on the FanDuel slate, less so on DK. And then Donovan Mitchell is one of those star pay-up options if he goes. Down the board, significant minutes projection for Dean Wade and Isaac Okoro. They're both playing 31 a game right now. They both saw around 35 plus the last time out, but they're pretty limited. Dean Wade, 0.57 fantasy points per minute, 17 in his 36.8 minutes last time out. 0.99 for Isaac Okoro, 25.7 in his 35 minutes. That's how they're projected. That's who they are. It gets you into the winning lineups a handful of times, but non-priority options, just minor pivot options. These are guys that don't really deserve to pick up a ton of ownership. You throw them into some lineups, of course, you want a little bit of this opportunity. But it's pretty thin once we start getting down there. At 3.6K for Dean Wade, you do see a little bit more value over on DK. It's a positive ROI number, mid-teens. It's all price-based. For 44 against the FanDuel cap, he's not showing nearly that same value. But at this number, there's some value there. There's some points per dollar there for Dean Wade. Again, assuming that we're talking about 30-plus minutes. Got him at 31, so we're 5 and change minutes behind what he did the last time in the same situation. George Niang, not coming up all that much. Negative ROI play, 3,500, not projected for very much. Giving him 19 minutes, he put up 15 fantasy points in that similar 19 minutes the last time out. 0.44 FanDuel points per minute. Yeah, we just looked at this Clippers team, didn't we? My Knicks. Mitchie up at the top. Jalen and Julius projected at the top in terms of just raw fantasy scoring anyway. 1.04 fantasy points per minute for Jalen, 1.06 so far for Julius. Mitch leading the way at 1.11. Go Mitch. I like Mitch. RJ Barrett, just kind of who he is. Mid-teens returns in the winning lineups. Capable of going out there and having a day. Usually going to settle into this 25 to 32 fantasy point range. 0.95 per minute so far this season. I think he was a little better than that last year. I forget whether he was a fantasy point per minute player or not last year. RJ was 0.92 DK points per minute, 0.87 FanDuel points per minute last year. I think you do get to some RJ Barrett. He's just kind of one of those mixers from the middle of the board. If he's unpopular, I think it increases the opportunity to go to him. If he's less popular than whatever he might be projected for in this sim, because he's clinging to a decent amount of value here. It's slightly negative ROI, but mid-teens returns in those top lineups, and that ROI would increase if he's not all that popular. These two guys are any given slate plays that you can mix into any given lineup. Jalen is positive ROI. Julius is slightly negative. Randall definitely a downturn so far this year. 1.24 DraftKings points per minute. Last year, 1.17 FanDuel points per minute. So far this year, just 1.06 on the FanDuel scale, 1.14 on the DK scale. Not crazy far off, but off by a little bit so far. Hasn't had the big day. The usage is there. His usage is at 30%. I'm sorry, it was at 30% last year. It is down this year, I believe. Yeah, 25%. Got confused what information was on what screen. But yeah, at least 4 playable pieces on the Knicks. I would probably prioritize it as 1, 2, 3, 4. Just given Mitch's points per dollar, Mitch's value, and his positioning, I think he's a little bit more critical than his teammates. You could easily say that given the numbers in the Sims, at least on FanDuel, Jalen's a little bit more valuable because he comes up a little bit more as a buy. Well, by ROI, Mitch is obviously more. On the DK slate, it's Mitch, and then you get some little bit more love for Julius over on DK for 8,000. Power forward and center eligible. Pushing basically a 40-point projection, nice point per dollar mark, coming up around 30% of the time in the winners. Negative ROI play, but significant appearances in the winning lineups, basically a third of the time. Everybody downboard for the Knicks. You're talking about 20-ish minutes. You're talking about sub 1 fantasy point per minute players outside of IQ. We all know that IQ can go off and have his day where the floaters are falling and he bends the slate a little bit. I don't mind mixing him in, but he's a little expensive for my tastes for what he typically does out there. One of the smaller point per dollar marks on the board. Like being one of the lowest point per dollar guys on the Knicks is not a great situation. This is also a low total game. Last update I did. Where is it? This game's at 213. The San Antonio Phoenix game is 226. Orlando LA is 220.5. This is the closest point spread at 3.5. But that's not a great total. Implied for the Knicks 108, 104 implied for the Cavs. The other two home teams, the Suns 116 implied points, the Clips 113. So I don't love the game environment here. I think it's a scrappy one. I think it's one of those situations where we're scrapping for rebounds. That's why I do like the Mitch play. That's why I do like the Mobley play. I think those guys can just collect a lot of fantasy points. And then it just becomes in this game specifically, which of the creators of fantasy points have their day. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell's the most likely guy there. Karis LeVert, probably then Julius. No, I'll put Julius above LeVert, Brunson above LeVert, then LeVert, then probably RJ. Not my favorite spot, but there's some plays here. Isaiah Hartenstein, if he gets a little bit more run, could be maybe a little interesting in that same big body, scrapping for rebounds kind of a game. He was also productive against them last year. So there's that. But again, a lot of these 20-ish minute type guys from DiVincenzo down in the Knicks rotation. Sub 1 fantasy points per minute. Some value there, single digits in terms of how frequently they come up, negative ROIs. But they are mixers at worst. You mix and match their way into some lineups. Fultz definitely showing value off the top. Playing basically the 28 minutes a game that we've got him projected for. Last time out, he went for 33. Put up 38 fantasy points. Overall in the season, 1.01 on the FanDuel scale, 0.96 on the DK scale. Significantly more appearances in the top lineups on FanDuel for 5,400 than on DK. You can see what that $200 more on DK against the lower cap does to his appearances in the top lineups. It takes his ROI from a positive 0.81 to a negative 1.15. A lot of price-based stuff. Banchero we talked about. I do like that option. Half the time on the FanDuel slate, but again, 7,800 on DK. Not nearly as optimal. Not nearly as good an ROI. Cole Anthony, somebody just asked about in the chat. Isaac is out. I was basically expecting that. I left him in the projections because that's what made sense during the day, but it seemed like it made some sense that he wouldn't go given that he never is healthy. Those 65 minutes in 2 seasons will really wear a guy out. So who do we have downboard on this team that might pick that up? I don't even know who's healthy out of these guys. Yeah, I'll have to think about that one. I don't know where those 12 minutes will go just yet, but it's only 12 minutes. It's not going to get all that much more valuable than what Jonathan Isaac was giving you here. Cole Anthony, though, comes up mid-teens on FanDuel, more around 10% of the time in the winners on DK. Negative ROI play, worse ROI play on the DK board. Another guy for 54 on DK, point guard, shooting guard versus 57 on FanDuel. Just a little bit more valuable on the blue site. A playable part, I think he's more of a mix and match type play. Not one of your key components of the day, but definitely somebody who could be in a winning lineup, clearly. Wendell Carter at the center spot. Not really coming up in terms of the winners on the FanDuel slate, but a lot more interesting on DK. 5,700 for him, showing a nice point per dollar mark. A positive ROI play at the center spot. So Wendell Carter's definitely got a little bit of value over there. Franz, somebody mentioned Franz as their favorite play of the day. Obviously, coming up a good amount of the time in the winners. 20% of the time on the DK board. 1.03 DK points per minute. 1 FanDuel point per minute. Giving you 34-minute projection. He's playing 33 a night. Played 36.9 the last time out. Only 35 fantasy points on that one. Kind of a clunker. But a capable guy of putting up, giving you a 50-plus night on the right night. The Magic look more like a lot of playable parts on DK. There's good options here, but not like through-the-roof killer options. Whereas on FanDuel, there's a few pretty killer options in terms of how frequently they're winning. Oh, now what did I do? I think we talked about most of Phoenix. Durant, obviously the big piece here. Significant value across both sites. Your best pay-up option, in my opinion. Okogie, it's going to be another one of those uncomfortable. You're going to get a lot of Jordan Goodwin, Grayson Allen, Eric Gordon, and Josh Okogie type lineups today. 4.08 point per dollar on FanDuel. Significantly higher at 5.75, one of the higher marks overall on the DK slate where he costs 4,200. Loses his multi-position on DK, only small forward and shooting guard on FanDuel at 51, but coming up a lot less frequently over there. 30% of the time in the top lineups on DK. 0.79, he's got a positive ROI on the DK board. Only 0.7 DK points per minute, 0.68 FanDuel points per minute. Not a premium option. Gonna hover around a 30-point ceiling. 23.2 minutes last time out. Gave you 8.2 fantasy points. That's not gonna help you. Had a better game than that earlier. Watanabe just picks up some backup run, 20 minutes. I've just got him on the other side of the Nurk minutes. Or excuse me, that's Eubanks. That's on the other side. Losing track. Eubanks is on the other side of the Nurk minutes. I saw that 20 and sidetracked myself. Eubanks shows value at that mark too. If he picks up beyond 20 minutes, that's a slate-breaking play. Say Eubanks goes for 24, 25, something like that. Nurk comes out early. They're blowing out San Antonio. Nurk doesn't play much of the fourth quarter, and Eubanks picks up minutes at 1.01 fantasy points per minute for 4,100, 3,700 on the DK slate. There's significant upside there. Gordon, never a comfy play. Always going to give you around 25 minutes, 32 fantasy points. It's a realistic Eric Gordon ceiling game. 0.79 FanDuel points per minute on the season. 0.82 DK points per minute. Has explosive upside ability every now and again. Needs that shot to fall. So far this year, 49.5% true shooting, an 8.9% assist rate, 4.1% rebounding rate. He's a scoring dependent play. Can get you there on the right day, projects out all right, but less fantasy points than minutes played. So always bear in mind what the ceiling might look like with an Eric Gordon. Jordan Goodwin, productive when he gets minutes, 26-minute projection, 26-point projection. Giving you 0.98 FanDuel points per minute, 0.99 on the DK scale. Comes up as a fairly valuable play on FanDuel for 5,000 at the point guard spot. Point guard only 4.9 on DK, also valuable over there. Nurk we touched on. Grayson Allen I never like. They've got so many guys on this team that it's like, oh, really? I got to play that guy? Allen is firmly on that list. 0.64 FanDuel points per minute for the season. 0.68 DK points. 30 minutes played last time out. 29 fantasy points. Playing 28 minutes a game. 28. A 50% true shooting. 14.3% assist rate. 31% from 3 on 5.3 takes a game. Eric Gordon, this is another factor with Eric Gordon. Taking 8 threes a game, making less than 30% of them. So far, again, 3-game sample. It's basically meaningless, but that's where the numbers are hiding right now. KD's the obvious name here. What was I looking up? Where is he? Is there another page? Ah, there he is. There is another page. Eubanks last year was 0.97 DraftKings points per minute, 1 FanDuel point per minute. Watanabe, since I did mention him, only getting a 20-minute projection, not really coming up all that frequently. 20 points in 20 minutes the last time out, averaging less than 20 minutes a game. Was out there running around doing some things in that first game they played this year. Grabbing some rebounds and whatnot, doing Yuta Watanabe things, but I don't think there's enough upside there. 60% true shooting on the season, a 7.5% rebound rate. Doesn't look like he's had any assists so far. Giving you 6 points a game and 3 rebounds so far in 3 games. Not a ton of value down board here. But there are definitely these 3 annoying guys, plus this guy. This guy's obvious. This guy's himself. Eubanks is an interesting dart throw mixer. But you kind of need Nurk to fail not fail, but come up short in minutes for Eubanks to really be able to shine. Ceiling optimal has Mitch Robinson, Mitchell, Strus, and 5 sons. Yowza. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about with those pain in the ass Suns. A lot of just crappy point per minute fantasy point players. One of them will get there, and the other 2 will have okay games. You just got to hit that day where it's the right combo, and all 3 of the mediocre guys get there. Devin Vassell, pretty interesting to me. 0.82 FanDuel points per minute so far this year. I like the upside, 6,800 at the shooting guard position. Pretty decent projection, 4.75 points per minute, points per dollar. Better point per dollar mark on the DK slate. Comes up pretty frequently in the winning lineups. If he's a guy that people aren't getting to as much as they probably should, I think that's a guy I can load up a few additional shares of. Zach Collins has been showing value through the early part of the season. 0.88 FanDuel points per minute. Same number on DK. A 30-point projection in 30 minutes. Last time out, just 25 minutes. Only 17 fantasy points. But there's a little bit more to squeeze out of Zach Collins than that. Not a ton of ceiling beyond those scores. But I do think Zach Collins is good enough to get us there for the money. And at the power forward spot, you can play him at center, but I think he's more valuable at the power forward spot. And then if you look at Zach Collins from last year, in roughly 1,500 minutes, 1.12 DraftKings points per minute, 1.11 FanDuel points per minute. So definitely some upside beyond who he's been at 0.88 so far this year. The sell last year was on this list somewhere 1.04 DraftKings points per minute, 1.01 FanDuel points per minute. So presumably some additional upside from what we've seen so far this year in 3 limited games from Devin Vassell as well. Trey Jones for value comes up a decent amount of the time, mid-teens. A playable piece, a little piece of rotational value. If you're building out 150 lineups, you get to him in a mix and match kind of a sense. Wemby yet to have that monster for us, 26 last time out, 26 minutes last time out, 21 FanDuel points, 1.24 points per minute, one of the better point per minute marks on the board. So far, only giving us 27 minutes a night. Hopefully that increases as the season goes on. He's obviously amazing to watch out there and does amazing things basically every game so far, drawing nearly 30% usage already. He is the focal point here, the most likely guy to put up a pretty decent number. And I'm going to keep going back to the play. Power forward and center eligible makes him a little bit dynamic. I want to be there on that first Wemby night. He's been a little bit more popular probably than he should have been in some of those slates. People want to be on him that first night he really explodes. But I think especially on a 3-gamer, there's a decent amount of value there. 25-ish% in the win column on FanDuel. A little bit less so on DK for a higher price, or same price against a lower cap. But an interesting option. Keldon Johnson is always just Keldon Johnson. I feel like I'm always disappointed by having Keldon Johnson in my lineups. But he's a guy who pops up because he's never like crazy high priced in that small forward position. Small forward and power forward on the FanDuel slate. He's fine, but he's only fine. He'll have a game here and there. Only 20% usage this year, down at 0.89 fantasy points per minute on the FanDuel scale. 0.94, a little bit better looking on DK. Slightly better. Well, no, slightly worse in terms of the amount of times he appears in the top lineups. Slightly better point per dollar mark. Slightly better projection. Definitely better point per minute mark. Everybody else, Jeremy Sohan, not all that much. 0.92 fantasy points per minute, 27-minute projection, not really giving you all that much. 10-ish%. A guy you can definitely mix and match your way to some shares. And the eligibility positionally is at least interesting. Point guard and power forward on FanDuel, point guard and small forward on DK. But more of a mix and match piece at best. Chetty we talked about. Obviously slight bending upside for Chetty. But realistically, 3.77 points per dollar in 21 minutes. 0.86 fantasy points per minute. Gave us 20 the last time out in 16 minutes. If he has this game and extends out to probably a little bit beyond these minutes, that's where he picks up maybe a little bit of value. Need him get out to like what? 28, somewhere around there on the FanDuel scale. Could happen. Everybody else down board kind of irrelevant. Dougie McBucket's just picking up garbage minutes. Malachi Branham, not all that interesting. So that was the up and down of it. Deeper than we've gone in the individual sense because there's only 3 games to talk about. Wow, it's 6:15 already. Oh, this 7:30 start. We're okay. I panicked there for a second, thinking we had a 7 o'clock start. Like I said, I was planning on knocking this out like 5 to 5:30. But it talked a little bit more than I was expecting to, but that's all right. Late game is crucial, especially with the Clippers having so many guys out and Zubac seriously questionable. Zubac sits. Plumlee is a borderline lock. If Zubac was out now, Plumlee ownership would be 70%, says Chuck Deuces. Maybe a little shorter of 70, but definitely Plumlee is going to be a very popular play in that scenario. And yeah, that Clippers game, that last game is very, very crucial. Be prepared to make swaps tonight, guys. Even on a 3-gamer, a lot of times you can get away from a 3-gamer, but this one seems like it's going to be requiring some time. With that in mind, we can hop over. And if I can figure out a quick way to do this. Oh, actually, that's perfect. I still left them open. I want to do this. Whoops. And now, I want to do... I got to pull them out to... Bear with me. Our pals over at Ace Mind. This is the FanDuel board. Top lineups, just to get a look from that sim. These are sorted by, I believe, ROI. Yeah. So again, just looking at Ace Mind's interface, you get your lineup, you get a nice little dashboard. This is the top 50, top 150 rather. So if you're in a rush and you just either have stuff loaded up in terms of what you've optimized and you can run the sim, you can just go right here and bang, just download your top 150. Or you can go over here and you can download the entire pool. The entire pool here is, where's that information? I thought it was on there. Maybe not. You can see a lot of interesting stuff about the, contest. Median projection of 280. Max of 300. Maximum simulated win probability for any given lineup is 0.21%. Simulated top 1%. That's kind of interesting. 8.9. Cash probability. I pay less attention to the cash probability. I'm shooting for the top, but that's obviously, a way that you can approach this of just, hey, I want lineups that make me money and don't have to be the top winners. You can take a look at that. You can also obviously use that for cash games. That was the top winner there. Pretty wide gap there between the 0.16 and the 0.21. Gives you your average cash one for the lineup, estimated dupes, salary, projections, so on and so forth. Where are that top 1%ers? A little bit more to work with in terms of the top 1%. Whoops. Some interesting looking stuff there. Fewer Suns than I was anticipating off the top of my head. Well, not necessarily. Actually, there's a lot of Eric Gordon through here. There is some Jordan Goodwin creeping in. There's an Okogie, some KD. Yeah, there's plenty of Suns. If we want to switch this up and take a look at DraftKings. Did that switch for you guys? I don't think it did. I realize this is blurry also, by the way. Oh, damn it. Make this a little bit more. Does that look better? There you go. So DraftKings. I'm clicking on the video screen because I'm dumb. That's what I needed. DraftKings, let's go by top 1%ers. Yeah, I think that tracks with what we were talking about and with that fairly heavy Suns configuration. Seeing a lot of KD, decent amount of Okogie. A little less Eric Gordon than I would have expected. Some Grayson Allen in through here. Fair amount of Okogie. A lot of Okogie. Eric Gordon seems to be the one that falls off a little bit on the DK slate, just eyeballing these, top 1%ers. But just some great info from these guys, and just another tool. I don't want to be here pounding my chest saying this is the only way to approach things. I've sim lineups for a number of years now. I have an Excel tool that I built that does a more limited version of this, but I can run like 10,000 lineups against each other 10,000 times in Excel. But this takes about 2 minutes from start to finish to run 30,000 lineups 50,000 times. where my Excel one takes, I don't know, roughly 40 minutes to run 10,000 lineups 10,000 times. So there's a clear difference, especially when, things change and you've only got 5 minutes to work with. Can't use that 40-minute one. You can get away with using this one. Mama says, damn, that's my lineup at the top. Blaine says, Blaine, one of the co-creators of this tool, on short slates, those ROI numbers can be inflated if the lineup has a low number of dupes to split the prize with. Makes a ton of sense. Mama says, that's crazy. I was all excited thinking I just made the nuts, and there it is. Love when that happens. I used to be pretty decent at that. Like putting stuff together in the mornings doing projections. And then I just dropped this USB key. If you ever break into my house and you want my spreadsheets, look for this USB key. Or just hack my computer, probably be easier. But yeah, I used to be pretty decent at that, like eyeballing things with the old optimal lineup rates and everything, and just being able to eyeball and hand build my way to the actual optimal lineup at 10 a.m. And then obviously everything changes. Can you swap to DK? So this is DK, bud. We're on DK right now. This is and by the way, contests matter, right? So this is for I'm always going to be simming against the big contests. So this is DK. This is the 400 grand fadeaway, 100K to first, 31,000 entries in it. So I think this is what you wanted. Did you want to go? This is sorted by top 1% win. Did you want to go by top ROI? What do you want to go by? Win probability? Thinner top win probability on DK. You guys are still seeing FanDuel? I apologize. I must have clicked the wrong one. That's still FanDuel. Are these just doing goddamn? They're on one side on my screen and they're on the other side of each other. What in the hell? No matter which one of these I click. All right. Take this. Huh? Now there's only one window to click. All right. If that had said FanDuel again, I was going to lose my mind. Let's see if I can make this a little bit more visible. All right. So this is our DraftKings board. Once again, or for the first time. This is by your ROI. Again, as Blaine said, the ROIs could be a little bit inflated, but I believe he said before that they are in order of ROI anyway, so it's correctly ranked whether the actual numbers themselves are inflated against the dupe probability on the small slates. So there's your tops by ROI. Some KDs. A lot of Goodwins, Gordons. Certainly not seeing much Mitch Robinson on the DK slate. Oh, there he is. Oh, center's in the middle. I was looking over here. I'm just programmed that way. So we are seeing a good amount of Mitch Robinson. Just got to look at the right column. Dean Wade, we talked about Dean Wade at that very, very cheap price, showing more value on the DK slate. He's coming up quite a bit. So it's an interesting little three-gamer at worst. Projection-wise on DK, we went a 270 max down to a 216 min with a 248 median. A lot of spread there. Max top 1% lineup that we came up with was 7.7%. 0.09% on the win. 3-point bonus probably helps Dean, says Blaine. Yeah, he was just coming up better in just, like my raw point per dollar numbers. He is very, very cheap. He's, 44 on FanDuel. In 31 minutes, I've got him pulling a 19-point FanDuel projection, 4.40 fantasy points per minute. But on DK, for the same 19 DK points, that's a 5.32 point per minute for 3,600 at the power forward spot. So popping for a little bit of value, but obviously needs to get those minutes. Anyway, gang, I think that's about it. Coming up on 7:30, I need my hour to get my lineups built, make sure that I'm updating projections and everything up on the site. We've had some changes already, so we got to get those accounted for. Got a little bit frantic yesterday with trying to build, trying to keep everything updated. Then I had to make late swaps, had to update for late swaps and guys who were ruled out after lock on the site for the projections. At the same time, I was trying to do all my my lineups for the showdown slate for football. It got frantic in here. That's why we didn't end up with a show yesterday. Just was a little bit too crammed and frazzled. But I think that's going to do it for this one. So I will close out and say good luck out there, guys. Somebody out there go win something tonight. And we'll be back tomorrow. NBA tomorrow for sure. We'll see if we can get football going a little bit earlier this week. Just in terms of at least getting the projections up on the site. I won't obviously sit here and say we're going to do an early football show because that's never been successful yet this season. But we'll try and get the projections up for tomorrow at least. Should have enough time to do that. But we'll be back for NBA tomorrow. And you guys rock. Hit the like button to subscribe. I don't harangue you during the show for it, but if you don't mind on your way out the door, pop a little thumbs up on there. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle. That helps us out a great deal. And pop into the Discord and just hang out, shoot the breeze. With that in mind, guys, I'm out of here. See you tomorrow.